taking over from Jack, I want to talk to you about how we can help you find and identify good use cases for identification with our new process configuration mapping capability. So before we get started, that's most of us when we look into a new org, especially as consultants, right? And even actually from interviews we've had with our customers, even if you're an admin or a platform owner working on one org for many years, that's probably how you feel half the time anyway. What is actually going on? And today I'm here to tell you that your org can talk, and in this presentation I'm going to show you how I can make it speak. Now, the reason why it's hard to understand how your org works and what's actually going on is because first, half the time you have a very complex configuration. I think the most complex I've ever seen was on case or account object, something close to 500 different record types, so just shy of that. So you've got your record types, your fields, your page layouts, all of that kind of on top of each other in some very complex situations. If that wasn't hard enough, you often have layers and layers of automations, your flows, your Apex triggers, your legacy automation, all firing at different times and in unexpected ways. All of that is obviously kind of hidden from us under the big wall of technical debt. Then you have messy permissions, people having access to too many things or not having enough access, 17 profiles and 20 permission sets, all pretty much doing the same thing. Okay, so you cannot trust the org necessarily to tell you everything, but you can always ask the stakeholders, right? Because they remember everything. No? Okay. So we have the problem. The systems are quite complex to interpret and understand what's going on, and people don't remember either. I remember years ago I was let me rephrase that. It was a mutual agreement. I was shadowing a process consultant who allowed me to do a bit of, let's say, what's the word? Field research and follow him into process discovery workshops. And it was fascinating to me that, session after session, he would bring, let's say, 5 salespeople, 5 accountants, and ask, so how do you do this process? 5 people in the room in the same job, giving 5 different answers. We use this system. No, we use that system. Well, first we do this. No, we do that later. No, I do this first. So it's not that they don't remember, they just don't agree. So you can be, I was wondering, why can't it be as easy as asking a question, right? Like just, how do we manage opportunities? How does our quote process work? How do we manage customer support? How do we handle renewals? Just ask a question, right, and get a response. If only it could be that easy. Well, it can. So this is what we're calling a process configuration mining. And the way this works is, and this is very simple representation because all of my top developers have been working on it for 7 months now. And it's only possible because we've spent years mining Salesforce metadata and dependencies and permissions. But fundamentally, the way this works is you ask a question, we use AI to interpret the question, and then behind the scenes, we go through all the metadata in your org, the dependencies between the metadata, right? What reads or writes or creates what and where, which, who has access to what, which automations fire. And once we find all the metadata and dependencies and relationships that are relevant to the question being asked, we then again use AI to help us summarize and draw a business process diagram. So let's actually see this in action. Now, this is actually on a test environment because we are yet to release it in closed beta in the coming weeks. So let's hope it works. I'm going to pick one of our orgs. I'm going to call this process a quote. And I'm going to ask, how do we manage quotes? As simple as that. Now, we just went through all the standard custom and manage objects in your org, and we went which ones, based on the name and description, seem relevant to the question being asked. Now, in this case, it's quite obviously the quote. If I asked maybe a bit more vague question, would come up with more options. So all I have to do is pick the right object. And unfortunately, the analysis has already started. I say unfortunately because at TDX I was actually using our opportunity process as an example. And what's happened behind the scenes is we then go check your fields, because fundamentally if you have any workflow on an object, for instance, it is driven by a pick list field, but not just any pick list field, right? It has to be a pick list field that is clearly based on its name or description, and the pick list values seems like a status or a workflow of some sort. Now on the order object, we only have one status field, as it turns out. So it just went, no, I know exactly what I need to do. Thank you very much. On opportunity object, we have stage. Our finance team also has invoice stage, which they use for something, and seems like a workflow. I don't know. I'm in product. I don't know much about finance. Seems important. And if you choose stage, you have potentially active sales processes, right? So the selection process might be a little bit longer. But in this case, the Elements decided, no, we're good. And you could see there was a notification there that it has finished. You can see it's in a test environment because the notifications are all not in proper English. And this is the process that was generated. I'm going to zoom in and show you a couple of things. So first of all, if I zoom in here at the beginning, what we have, we generate the business process in a universal process notation. Every step in the process is a box, which is an active verb statement. There's an input describing when and under what conditions does the process happen, and there's an outcome which summarizes what is the business outcome, or in this case, the various system changes that result from that status. And we have resources on the box, which are either human, in other words, who can perform this step, or system with what capability is being used. Now, what is quite interesting is we have found there is a screen flow called create quote that, after we've summarized its logic, fundamentally creates a new record created in draft state with quote line items selected from the price book with specific fields such as space, billing address, billing contact. And because there are actually many fields being set through the screen flow, we just set in 65 other fields. Seems like a lot, if you ask me. Now, there is a recurring theme in these presentations, in that our operations team have spent a lot of time and effort in designing these processes and building these flows. And when asked, they're absolutely certain that these flows, and it's the same story with the opportunity process, is the only way to create a new opportunity, or a new quote in this case. But as we keep finding is Salesforce has this neat feature with related lists. And by default, the new button is turned on, which means your users technically can go to a related list from one of the related objects and, for instance, create a new record, bypassing any kind of automations and rules you have put in. So to Jack's continuous anger and irritation, we keep finding that there are indeed a bunch of objects on lots of related rated lists on lots of related objects, which allow our users to bypass a very smart screen flow and create God knows what, to be honest. So just by kind of looking at that, we have identified that there are two ways for order object that allow our users. There's no quick actions, there's no global actions. They've cleaned all of that up. They forgot about the related list. So we have two ways in which people can create quotes. Now, the other thing I would like to, and by the way, as you can see, every metadata that we have identified as relevant to the process, or that helped us identify this process step, we linked in context to the step. So if you want to verify whether that automation or page or permission actually does what we think it does, well, you can always check our homework right there. You know, I can open it up and either open it in Elements or open in Salesforce. And that's another interesting thing. So first of all, we have now identified two different ways in which a quote can be created with two different, and that's not necessarily wrong, except for we are kind of enforcing two different data standards, right? So probably not doing us any favors in terms of data quality. The other interesting thing is, you know, we talked about the human roles that we've identified based off analysis of profiles and permission set and groups, who can actually perform these steps. We actually looked at who can create new quote records, but we have also looked in this case who can access the page on which the screen flow is embedded. And by comparing the two, we could say this subset of roles can actually perform this. The thing which is quite interesting is, well, system admins, fair enough. The CPQ user, fair enough. Why does marketing create and edit quotes? Now, again, I'm in the product, but to me that sounds wrong. If we go further, we can also see how the different status values kind of come up together as a workflow. But in some cases, we can see that the transition is fairly simple, right? You conduct formal assessment, and the outcome is record status is updated to in review. But in other times, it's not just status update, but actually some more complicated business logic. That is because we also look at all the validation rules, and we check which validations rules apply to which transitions throughout your process and what kind of data is therefore required. And if there's any record-triggered automation, in this case, there's one record-triggered flow after the quote is accepted that creates opportunity updated to close one, quote is logged, PDF is generated. Seems that it's doing a lot of things. But it could be Apex triggers, could be other things. So this is a business process that we were able to generate, well, I don't know how long it took, but probably 30, 40 seconds, just by asking a question, how do we manage quotes? We looked at flows, well, no any Apex here, but fundamentally any record-triggered automations, validations, permissions, fields, transitions, quick actions, global actions, related lists, and you name it, how it all comes together, how it actually works today. Not how you think it works, not how you hope it works, not how it was designed to work when you worked on the diagrams 3 months ago. No, this is how it actually works with all the technical debt, all the permissions, and everything else at display. And the really interesting thing is it's not just a static picture, right? This is fundamentally a snapshot of, at this moment in time, how it's all designed to work. So if I actually want to collaborate with the business stakeholders and present it in some workshop session and have a conversation about our pain points, right? There's nothing stopping me from doing just that. And we can use this as a foundation for our as-is, so we can use it as a foundation of where you want to go and to be by making changes to that process. And in this case, as probably in lots of different organizations, reviewing and authorizing quotes is probably a big issue. So if we think about the process of going from understanding of business processes to path to Agentforce, if you understand how your process works today, actually how it works, not how you, again, wish it worked, not how you think it works, but with all the technical debt, over-provisioning and other challenges, we can clean up technical debt to have a leaner process. You can fix over-provisioning to make sure you have better data, only the right people can perform the actions. You can also standardize on sources of data. Now, in this process, it was only 2. An opportunity, as we found, we had 5 or 6 ways opportunities could be created, and no wonder the data was all over the place, right? So maybe let's lock down all the ways we don't want people to be using. And once we have a lean, clean, optimized business process, then it takes a sort of a BA mindset to look and identify any high effort, low velocity process steps that we could potentially identify. Now, in our case, we are able to we understand our business, we can look at certain steps and go, we definitely have an issue there. But one of the things we are working on already, other than this, is how can we analyze, again, using AI, these process steps and make some recommendations on, you should probably look at agentifying or someone automating these steps in your process.